Hi there, I hope you're all well. This week I'm delighted to be sharing my latest customised Blythe doll. She was commissioned by one of my wonderful Patreon supporters in the custom doll tier. Members of that tier can commission custom dolls. They have access to a form which lets you put in all the details of how you'd like your doll to be customised. In addition to customising blank dolls I have here, they can have their own blank dolls customised too. I'm open to customising all sizes of Blythe doll, smart dolls and others too. Let's have a look at who I'll be customising today. My customer chose this bald-headed AliExpress Neo Blythe as the base for her custom doll. Although it might not be her permanent name, we're calling her Meadow for now. She comes with no makeup, eye chips, no hair, no markings on the back of her head. I'll need to take her head apart to separate the pieces ready for customizing. I removed the 3 screws on the back of her head and squeezed the sides of the head to pop them open. The jointed body can be lifted out, and I'll use needle nose pliers to remove this spring. To lift off the scalp, I'll need to remove this screw in the front of the head. I've untied the plastic pull ring and can remove the back head plate. I unscrew and remove the plastic T-bar and then use a flathead screwdriver to gently prise out the white plastic eyeball from one side. I carefully remove the eyeball, center stem, and other eye, being careful to reassemble them in the same manner. The stem should be shaped in a way to keep the eye directions lined up. I remove the cord, then carefully pull the eyelid mechanism out from the head. The separate pieces are now ready for customizing. My Patreon member gave me some inspiration to work from when coming up with the concept artwork for Meadow. She told me she sees Meadow as a little girl growing up on a farm with chickens, a garden, and wildflowers. She spends her days hugging chickens and picking flowers while her mother gets the chores done. She sent me some inspiration photos, in particular one of a Polish chicken, which was her own. They look like such fantastic birds. I sketched up a few ideas for possible outfits and asked if anything stood out as a favourite. Meanwhile, I was able to start sanding and preparing the head for carving. At the moment, I find I use a range of sandpapers from 400 up to 1200 grit. I always like to sand the entire front and back of the head, as well as the eyelids. I will usually use a 600 or 800 grit for this. You can use an even higher grit if you prefer. The aim is simply to remove any existing face-up or sealant to provide a consistent surface to work on without creating any scratches. I usually save the 1000 and 1200 grit paper for after the face has been carved, and the 400 grit to help smooth out the roughest areas which have been carved. I also love to use these sponge-backed sandpapers in the same range of grit numbers. I find them very comfortable to use. You can see the shiny plastic transform into a smooth, matte surface. I use a simple pencil to plan out areas that I want to carve and remove. You can also sketch in eyebrows if it helps you visualize the face. I've sketched in areas I want to cut into and lines to help me try to keep things symmetrical. I'll add further guidelines as I progress. Using a sanding drum and my rotary tool, I open the upper eye a little more. I use the same method to cut down the pointed tip of her nose quite substantially to create a smaller and more upturned point. I smooth out the transition to the new shape using a scraping motion with my curved edge scalpel blade. I turn the head round in my hand and vary the direction in which I'm scraping. Let's take a moment to say hi to my stalker, a very cute and fluffy neighbourhood cat who likes to wait on my windowsill to stare at me as I work and beg for treats. I use a curved woodworking tool to cut into the sides of the nose, creating a sharper definition. I follow this up with the curved scalpel blade again. I use a ball-tipped carving bit and a fresh guideline to carve a little ridge into the top of her nose. Some of the details requested by my customer were based on previous custom dolls that I've done, so I'm referencing some of my earlier work as I create Meadow's face. A handheld drill bit helps me create slightly more defined nostrils. I'm careful not to dig too deeply. I use the ball-tipped bit again to remove some of the material above the lip line that I've drawn. This will help to push the lips outward and make them look fuller. The rotary tool can leave quite a messy surface behind, so I follow it up with the curved scalpel blade to smooth out any rough areas. Next, I use the woodworking tool again to carve material out from under the bottom lip. At this point, I gently sand the nose and mouth areas and check for symmetry and my progress. She has too much of a pouty look for me, so I'm going to deepen the outer corners of her mouth. I also use the curved scalpel blade to cut in some more definition between the lips and define the philtrum. I use a scraping motion with the outline of the upper lip to help define its shape further. I much prefer the small curved blade, but I use a larger one to help scrape and smooth out larger surface areas like the cheeks and below the mouth. I also like to use metal jewellery files to carve in small detail and smooth out rounded internal areas. As the face develops, I try to keep things smooth as I go, using small sections of sandpaper to help soften small areas. I use a magic eraser sponge to help pick up grit from the surface. Before I begin the final sanding, I want to try something I saw another customizer do recently, and that is sanding the slightly raised joining line between the front and back faceplates. You can tell me whether you think it was worth it in the end. I'm not sure it makes enough of a difference. Be sure to wear a face mask whenever sanding, and wherever possible use a little spray bottle to help grab any loose particles. I find wet sanding much cleaner and looking closely at the wet surface helps show any tiny scratches much more easily too. I work my way up through the different grit numbers from 400 up to 1200 and finish by washing each piece in soapy water and scrubbing with a piece of magic eraser sponge. Once everything's dried thoroughly, I'm really pleased with the finish. I'm now ready to start the face up and use my trusty pan pastels, watercolour pencils and Mr. Super Clear sealant for the majority of it. To prepare the face and backplate for colouring, I spray them carefully with 2 to 3 layers of Mr. Super Clear, allowing at least 30 minutes curing time for each layer. I use a ventilated airbrush booth to spray indoors, and I recommend wearing a ventilator mask too. I screwed a wooden popsicle stick to the inside of the head to help me hold it without getting greasy fingers all over the place, which is also useful when spraying the MSC. For a realistic skin base, I like to start my face-ups with a little yellow, pink and blue colouring, mimicking the colours seen in real faces where the skin is thinner and blood vessels are more visible. I blend out the colours with larger round brushes and use smaller brushes to apply colour more carefully. If some of the colour has spilled over, you can use a magic eraser sponge or a kneaded putty eraser to clean it up. I add warmer, deeper colour to the lips, nostrils, insides of the ear and the back of the head before spraying the first additional layer of Mr. Super Clear. While this cures, I start building up colour on the eyelids and decided to add some blushing to these costume elf ears as well. The pan pastel sticks really well to these rubbery ears. I continue building up more colour after each layer of MSC, adding a little shading above the eye sockets as well. I want to keep the face up fairly light and natural for this childlike doll, and use my watercolour pencils to add a little white and pink detailing under the eyes and on the inner corners. At this point, I'm pleased with the overall look, and I'm ready to block in her eyebrows. I do this after a coat of MSC, just in case everything goes blurry and I decide I don't like the eyebrows at all. I'm able to wipe them away with the sponge and try again. I use my kneaded putty eraser, shaped to a point, to rub away and refine the edges of the eyebrows. I use a very thin paintbrush and some water to lift pigment from the tip of some watercolour pencils. In a palette, I can mix the colour I want, then individually brush each hair onto the face. I will build up the eyebrows over 2 or 3 different layers until I'm satisfied, varying the colours used. I also use my pencils to sketch and colour her backplate art. I'm drawing a slightly cartoony version of a Polish chicken. I'll surround it with leaves and wildflowers, as well as adding my signature and number Again, the colour will be built up over numerous layers to achieve better saturation. This custom Blythe had the option of either brown or red real sheep fleece hair. Her new owner chose brown, and although I've used this glued method before, it's very fiddly and frustrating to try to show on camera. Essentially, I'm using contact glue to glue the cut fleece directly to the scalp of the doll here. I keep holding it closer and closer to me and found the loose hairs would stick to my fingers and to any tool I used, which was very annoying. So I ended up doing the rest off camera. Perhaps I'll share it once I'm a little more practiced. As it was, I was picking glue off my fingertips for days. Her hair looks fantastic though, so soft and with a natural curl at the end. Before I reattach it though, I need to finish off the rest. I chose some lovely eye chips to install and use a silicone mould with some coloured glitter to create special resin pull rings. I added some freckles to her face, a little gloss varnish to her lips, eyelids and under eyes too. Before I reassemble her head though, I have some modifications to do. Boggling the eyelids involves cutting out a little section of eyelid on each side. You can see when the eyelids are installed that they are stopped by a little sticking out section on each side. When fully opened, we can still see a little bit of eyelid showing from the front. By cutting out a few millimeters of eyelid, we allow them to open just a little bit more, so they can't be seen from the front, and in some cases allowing the little plastic bar under the eyes to be visible too. This is why I often colour that little piece pink. I reinstall the whites of the eyes, being careful to keep the gear mechanism on the right as I look inside the face. I use a flat screwdriver again to gently prise them in place. I check the motion works correctly before reinstalling the T-bar. I'm going to cut a tiny amount from the top of the T-bar, being careful to maintain the slight angle that it has. This acts as a stopper for the gear in the eye mechanism, telling the eyes where to stop after each colour change. The default gaze for this doll is to the side, and by shortening the bar we'll be able to tilt that gaze upward. This modification is called gaze correction. If the bar is cut too short, you will be able to see the next set of eye chips peeking up from the bottom of the eyeballs, and it's likely the eye mechanism won't work properly. I cut just a tiny sliver off with my scalpel and check that everything still works. I don't want to push the gaze too far in this instance. I'll get everything screwed together now. Doesn't she look gorgeous? Do you like the colours I chose for her eyes? She has one set of special glittery silver eye chips. Very cute. Of course, I've yet to style her hair and make her outfit. And I forgot to mention that I installed one of our neck joints for her as well. Meadow's new owner particularly liked the welly boots and dungarees shown in her concept artwork. Based on the colour palette I plan to use, I used my basic t-shirt pattern to make her a bright yellow top with hand-stitched frills on the sleeves and colourful buttons on the back. I also decided to use my recent Monst Dungarees sewing pattern as a starting point for her own dungarees. They actually fit quite nicely as they are, but will need longer straps, more space around the hips, and slightly more fitted at the legs. I asked my husband to increase the size of the 3D printed welly boots that we share for free on our website, so that they would easily fit over the jointed feet of the AliExpress Blythe. He printed them in a flexible filament that I will be able to paint. The soles of the boots are printed separately for maximum detail and are glued on afterwards. In case you haven't seen them before, this is the first pair I made some time ago to fit the smaller feet of the genuine Blythe dolls. I chose this lovely brown linen fabric to make her dungarees from, outlining them with fray check before cutting. I've just joined the centre front seam and have cut a large pocket which I plan to add embroidered details to. And just like that, her dungarees are done. You can see the full assembly in my Monst Doll sewing pattern video. I'm absolutely delighted with how these came out. I designed my own embroidered details for the pocket and leg, added tiny leather straps stitched into place with metal buckles on the front. The inside is lined and it simply slips up onto the body. Meadow's welly boots are coloured using acrylic paints in a cheerful yellow and brown combination. I had a lovely little moment when the sun shone through them as they were drying on my windowsill. I decided to make her some matching underpants and socks using a striped white and blue jersey fabric. I stretched the pants over a glue bottle as I sew the elastic lace in place. Both the pants and socks were hand-stitched. Since Meadow will be spending time on the farm picking wildflowers, I thought she could use a good-sized wicker basket. I used brown craft card to make the base and strips to weave her basket. I finished the edge and handle with woven wrapped strips. I stitched a fabric lining for the inside of the basket, edged it with lace, and then used a dry brushing paint technique to distress and highlight the woven texture. I picked out some small plastic flowers to fill her basket with for travelling home. She needs a comfortable travelling case to go home in, so I sewed her a cosy little pouch. It's essentially a large rectangle with a wadded inside layer, which has snap fastenings added to each end for a closure. I fold in the sides of the pouch, leaving one end short, and then hand stitch the two short sides securely closed. This makes a nice padded envelope of sorts, which I find very practical when taking a doll out with me, as I can put it in my bag easily. We always include a doll stand with our Blythe dolls. Meadow is getting a nice green one. I ended up adding a couple cute charms and a mushroom to her flower basket. Let's get Meadow ready. And here's another look at the rotation and flexibility our neck joint adds to the head. I just love how her outfit turned out. Her stripy socks and bright coloured welly boots are so cute with her embroidered dungarees and frilly sleeves. Minus the pumpkins, here's what will be travelling with her. A little cardboard suitcase with some stamps and washi tape stickers. I'll include some extras and photo stickers of her too. Her little flower basket complete with charms and plastic flowers. A lovely goodie bag from another of my generous Patreon members, filled with hair clips and baubles. They're so cute. Her padded travelling case, and inside, of course, is Meadow. I've installed a second sleep eye cord and have decorated them with the special glittery resin pull rings I made along with some cute beads. She has front-facing green hazel eyes, right-facing silver glitter eyes, front-facing brown, and left-facing blue eyes. I think they suit her so well. I've tied her hair into pleats and added a little crocheted daisy hair clip. And who's this in her pocket? A cute little rabbit character who can peek out to see what's going on. I think she makes a lovely little friend for Meadow to go adventuring with. What do you think of Meadow's finished outfit? What's your favourite part? Do you have any Blythe dolls who are like little children? Before we see some clips of Meadow travelling around town, let's have a look at how she started and how she looks now. It's quite the transformation. I'll leave links in the description box below if you want to check out my Patreon page. There are public posts there explaining how to commission a custom doll for yourself. And of course, if you've any questions, just contact me using the contact form on my website, bethramsden.com. You'll find sewing patterns and other goodies on my website there too. A huge thank you to all my supporters over on Patreon. You really are all fantastic, wonderful, and appreciated. I'll be making a start on my next custom doll this week, so watch this space for more unique Blythe dolls. I'd love to know what you thought of Meadow, so please do leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and write a nice comment below. Thank you all so much for watching. Look after yourselves and each other, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!